Money has a funny way of misbehaving in families. The less we talk about it, the louder it shows up later, usually at the worst moment. I have sat with parents who want to give their kids every opportunity and with kids who want independence without feeling controlled, and the tension is real. The stakes are not just financial, they are identity, motivation, and relationships. If you make money too easy, you risk suffocating drive. If you make it too secret, you create doubt and drama. If you make it too complicated, nobody knows what to do when it matters. Today I am walking through the 3 rules Warren Buffett teaches his kids, and how I translate them into practical steps any family can use. The idea is simple. Give your kids the power to choose, not the permission to quit. Explain your decisions while you can, and pass down values that outlive your portfolio. If you enjoy calm, evidence-based money experiments and breakdowns, tap like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments the age of the kid you have in mind so I can tune the examples. I am going to keep this relaxed and concrete. I will show numbers, name the frictions that jam good plans, and give you a clean way to start. No guru mystique, just a few models you can borrow. Think of this as a map you can sketch in pencil, update as life changes, and keep in a place your family can actually find. The payoff is not just more wealth, it is fewer awkward silences and more aligned choices. When I ask parents what a great outcome looks like, almost nobody says a number first. They say options, calm, and character. They want a kid who can say yes to an internship that pays learning instead of cash, who can walk away from toxic work, who can start a project without begging for permission. Underneath that is a simple money goal, enough runway to explore without erasing the incentive to build. A practical target for a young adult is 12 months of living expenses in cash-like safety, a skill stack that earns, and a starter investment habit that compounds quietly. For many families, the dream is seeing a 22-year-old with clarity, not entitlement. You can express that in numbers. If your kid needs $2,500 a month to live modestly in their city, a $30,000 emergency cushion buys 12 months of freedom to choose and learn. If they can cover 60% of expenses with part-time or entry-level work, and you bridge the rest for a defined season, they still feel the engine of effort. For you, the parent, the desire is similar in reverse. You want to sleep at night, knowing your plan is fair, logical, and documented. You want a legacy that is values first, tax smart without being extreme, and flexible as life changes. And you want fewer moments where you wonder whether your silence today becomes an argument tomorrow. That is the true north we are steering toward. Good intentions run into hidden frictions. We swim in social comparison, where a cousin flashes a windfall, a friend brags about a trust, and your kid wonders if they are behind before they start. We deal with lifestyle creep, where help that was meant to be a bridge quietly becomes a floor. We face secrecy culture, the old idea that money topics are impolite, which feels safe now and explosive later. Then there are bad incentives built into products and advice, where the loudest plan is the one with the highest fee. Even the myths get in the way. The surprise reading of a will makes for great drama and terrible outcomes. A 25-year-old who suddenly receives $500,000 without guardrails is not rich. They are rushing into the hardest decisions on the hardest timeline with the noisiest advice. There is also the friction of complexity. We toss around terms like trust, executor, beneficiary, and letter of wishes, and then expect a teenager to act like a seasoned fiduciary. Add FOMO from hot tips, the fear of missing out on whatever coin, stock, or startup is trending, and you have a recipe for short-term decisions that ignore long-term values. Finally, there is a loss aversion, our tendency to feel losses more than gains. It pushes parents to keep control too long and pushes kids to avoid sensible risks. None of this is moral failure. It is just the water we swim in. We need rules that neutralize the frictions while keeping the heart of the plan intact. Here is the switch that flips the system into something that actually works. Warren Buffett boils it down to 3 rules. Rule 1, leave enough to do anything, not enough to do nothing. That is a design principle, not a dollar amount. You aim for freedom and motivation at the same time. Rule 2, communicate openly about wealth and decisions, including letting mature children read the will before you sign it and explaining the why. Transparency is not a reveal, it is training. It turns a mystery into a mission. Rule 3, focus on values, not just money. That means you pass down habits, standards, and purpose with the dollars, because values are the operating system that keeps the plan running when you are not in the room. I translate these into mechanics. Enough to do anything looks like funding education, a defined runway, and seed money with guardrails rather than a blank check. Open communication looks like a standing family money conversation and documents that are readable, not just legal. Values first looks like routines that reward curiosity, earning, saving, and giving. In a minute, I will show numbers like how a 300 monthly education contribution compounds, how a 4% distribution rule shapes a trust, and how a parent match on earned income fuels motivation. The point is not to idolize Buffett. The point is to steal the mechanism and make it yours. When these rules move from quotes to calendar, families feel the difference fast. You stop negotiating money in high emotion moments and start following a plan you already agreed to. Your kid does not ask for a bailout in the abstract. They make a case that fits the framework, and you can say yes or no with less friction. Transparency reduces the suspense that turns small slides into big stories. If the will and the reasons are clear while you are healthy, there is less guessing and less resentment later. The values first piece shows up in behavior. A teenager who earns their first $3,000 and sees you match a portion into savings or a Roth IRA feels seen for effort, not for asking. A college grad who understands why you funded Runway and not forever money makes different choices. On your side, you get a documented, flexible plan that is easy to maintain. Your estate documents stop being mystery scrolls and start being an instruction manual written in plain language. You know the checkpoints, like reviewing beneficiary designations each year, reaffirming your giving plan, and updating dollar amounts as the world moves. The result is not perfection. It is a family that trusts the process and adjusts together. That is what money is for: better choices and fewer regrets. Let me define the core idea. Enough to do anything means giving your child opportunity capital without giving them retirement capital. Opportunity capital is money that buys time to learn and the ability to start, not the ability to stop. I use an independence number, a simple estimate of the cash cushion and education funding that unlocks options. For a young adult in a moderate cost city, $30,000 for a 12-month runway plus targeted education support hits the mark far better than a giant lump sum. The mechanics matter. If you hand over $300,000 at 25, you risk turning choices into temptations. If instead you fund $300 a month from birth into a diversified education account that earns a reasonable 6% a year, you end up with roughly $115,000 to $120,000 by age 18, which covers a big chunk of tuition or training without teaching passivity. If you want to help post-school, consider a parent match on earned income for a set period, like $1 of support for every $1 your kid earns, up to $6,000 a year for 3 years. That shows belief and builds habits. Guardrails help. Distributions that step up with age or that match earned income keep effort in the loop. A 4% distribution rule is a common guide, meaning a long-term pool targets about 4% yearly withdrawals to support opportunity without eroding the principle too fast. The number is not sacred, it is a starting point. The principle is the key: be generous with doors that open, cautious with hammocks that slow. Let me model a simple plan with round numbers. Say you intend to leave $1,000 across kids and courses. Instead of $500,000 to each kid outright, you allocate $250,000 per child into a trust designed for opportunity. A trust is a legal wrapper that holds assets for a beneficiary and enforces your guardrails. If the trust targets a 4% distribution, that is roughly $10,000 a year available per child for education, training, relocation, or early career runway, with the option to request more for specific goals. Add a matching clause that says the trust can match earned income 1-for-1 up to $10,000 a year between ages 18 and 28, and you have built a machine that rewards work. If your daughter earns 8,000 waiting tables while interning in her field, the trust releases 8,000 to support rent and courses. You are not paying her to exist, you are financing acceleration. Layer in education funding earlier. A $300 monthly contribution from birth at a 6% average return compounds to around $116,000 by 18, while $500 monthly lands in the $190,000 neighborhood. If you start at 10, even $300 monthly still grows to roughly $70,000 by 18. Compounding is patient, and so should we be. Avoid the big trap of the lump sum surprise that shouts "spend me." Spreading support across milestones, tying money to effort, and using age-based release points aligns incentives. Keep taxes and costs simple. Aim for broad, low-cost index funds inside the account, avoid high-fee products that promise magic, and understand that investment earnings for minors can trigger special tax treatment once they pass small thresholds. The point is clarity, not cleverness. Open communication about wealth and decisions sounds nice until the calendar fills and the topic feels heavy. I make it light and regular. Think of a family money meeting as a 60-minute conversation once or twice a year, where you share principles first and numbers second. Explain the purpose of your plan, the rough shape of the pie, and the roles. Define terms in plain language. A will is a document that directs where assets go and who handles your estate. An executor is the person you name to carry out those instructions. A beneficiary is who receives what. A letter of wishes is a plain English note that explains your reasoning and guidance to the people administering your plan. If the kids are mature, I let them read the draft will before I sign, then I answer questions while I am here to answer. Share enough detail to remove mystery without turning it into a scoreboard. Percentages are often cleaner than dollars because markets move. You can say something like this: most of our assets are earmarked for philanthropy. A meaningful share supports each of you through a trust with guardrails, and here is why. Then pause and invite questions. The tone matters. It is not a performance, it is practice. You are training your future executors and your future beneficiaries to act like a healthy team. Transparency does not mean dumping anxiety on your kids, it means replacing confusion with instructions and intent. I do a pre-mortem, a simple exercise where you imagine the plan failed and ask what went wrong. Maybe your executor lives far away, or your instructions are vague, or your accounts have outdated beneficiaries. Fix those now. Use a plain password manager and a one-page inventory that says where things are and who to call. Keep it simple enough that a stressed adult can follow it on the worst day. Expect emotional friction and name it. Siblings hear numbers differently, so explain the logic behind differences, like extra support for a child with caregiving responsibilities or a health issue. When you use a professional trustee, understand typical costs. Corporate trustees often charge around 0.5 to 1.0% of assets yearly, so only hire that layer if it truly solves a problem like longevity or impartiality. Pick roles for competence, not birth order. And review the plan yearly for the boring stuff: addresses, beneficiaries, powers of attorney, and healthcare directives. A power of attorney is the document that lets someone handle finances if you cannot. A healthcare directive guides medical decisions. Test your plan with a simple drill. If you disappeared for 90 days, could your team pay the bills, file taxes, and keep the lights on without guessing your values? If not, add clarity until the answer is yes. Values are the operating system for money. When you pass down dollars without the code that runs them, the system crashes under pressure. I keep values practical and observable. Curiosity shows up as reading, questions, and experiments. Responsibility shows up as work, saving, and finishing things. Integrity shows up as keeping promises and telling the truth when it costs. Generosity shows up as giving and service. I wire those into money routines. For young kids, I like the thirds habit: one part to spend, one to save, one to give, not as a rigid rule, but as a default that starts conversations. For teens, I prefer steady allowance for basic autonomy and separate pay for above and beyond work, because I want them to learn budgeting and the connection between extra effort and extra money. For young adults, earned income becomes the main teacher, and I match good behaviors. If a teen earns $3,000 in a summer, I might contribute $500 to a Roth IRA if they will put in $500 too. A Roth IRA is a retirement account funded with after-tax dollars, so qualified withdrawals later are tax-free, which makes early contributions surprisingly powerful. A single $500 contribution at 8% that compounds for 50 years grows to roughly $23,000, and that is just one seed. I also like a simple giving practice. A donor-advised fund is an account where you can put money today, get a tax benefit, and give to charities over time. Involving kids in small grants is a concrete way to teach impact and humility. Values are not slogans, they are reps. Here's how I put this together without turning it into a second job. I write a one-page plan in plain language. The top says purpose. We want to create independent, ethical adults who can choose meaningful work. Then I outline the 3 rules in a sentence each: enough to do anything, clear communication, values first. Next, I set starting numbers. If my target runway is 30,000 by age 22, I back into how to fund it, maybe 150 a month for 10 years into a simple index fund, plus summer earnings with a parent match. If education support is a goal, I pick a monthly number that fits my budget and automate it. Automation beats willpower because it removes decision fatigue. I schedule a recurring family money conversation every spring and fall with a short agenda: what changed, what stays, what we are learning. I create a letter of wishes that explains my will and trust logic in a normal voice, and I store it with the documents. For teens, I bake in earned income, even if it is irregular. When they file a simple tax return, we talk about what taxes fund and what they get for it. If they contribute to a Roth IRA, I celebrate the behavior, not the balance. If they mess up, we debrief the decision, not shame the person. The maintenance is light: review accounts once a quarter, update beneficiaries once a year, and revisit the will when big life events happen. The goal is resilience, not rigidity. Every family has edges. If one child earns far more than the other, a strict equal split may feel fair on paper and unfair in life. When you deviate, anchor in values and document the why, like extra support for caregiving, disability, or career choices that serve others at lower pay. If you worry that sharing details will create entitlement, share principles and ranges instead of exact balances, then phase in more detail as they demonstrate judgment. If your assets are illiquid, like a business or a property, teach what liquidity means: the ability to turn assets into cash without big losses, and plan for the time it takes to sell or transition. If you want to encourage entrepreneurship, fund stages like a small grant for a prototype, a match for first revenue, and introductions to mentors rather than a giant check. If you fear lifestyle creep, pre-commit to ceilings like housing support capped at a number that encourages modest choices. If markets scare you, remember that risk is not a villain, it is a price we pay for return, and we can dial it to the time horizon. Use broad index funds, stay diversified, and keep costs low, because fees compound too. Most of all, keep it human. Money conversations are easier over a walk or a simple meal than a formal summit. A plan that your family actually uses beats a perfect plan that nobody reads. And a little humor helps. I remind my kids that the plan is less like an inheritance and more like a family operating manual: fewer fireworks, more flight checklist. Let me land the plane. The first rule gives your kids opportunity capital without the hammock, so they feel freedom and drive. The second rule swaps secrecy for clarity, so people know what you decided and why, while you are still around to explain. The third rule installs values as the operating system, so the dollars behave when the world gets noisy. Put them together and you get independent adults, calmer households, and a legacy that is both generous and wise. Your next step can be tiny and powerful. Write a one-paragraph purpose statement and stick it at the top of your money documents. Pick one number you will commit to, maybe the monthly education contribution or the age-based distribution rule, and automate it. Put a 30-minute family money conversation on the calendar, state the goal, and promise snacks. Then relax, you are allowed to iterate. I would love to hear your plan. In a comment, tell me one of two things: either the independence runway number you want your kid to have, or the age when you plan to share your will and the letter that explains it. If you found this useful, tap like and subscribe so you and I can keep building these evidence-based money playbooks together. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Take a breath, choose one small action, and let the compounding of good decisions do what it always does. It adds up quietly and then all at once.